Hey Heifers, and welcome to Angus Eye Tea, the podcast all about anxiety, depression, and today we are 3 years old. We aren't shitting ourselves as much anymore, like still a little bit, but now we wear pull-ups. Yeah, I'm a big girl now. I'm wearing pull-ups with the dinosaurs on them. Maybe they glow in the dark. I don't know. Glow in the dark shit also when we were kids. I mean, it's still exciting now. Don't get me wrong. But having glow in the dark shit as a kid was like, oh my God, you were a demigod or something. Like, it was like when you had light up sneakers and you were like the Sherpa through dark tunnels, you know, all those times you were running through dark tunnels with your child gang, but you felt special. And I guess this is to say that I feel special with this, your glow, the glow stick of this podcast has been cracked, broken, and yet now it shines, and like we're all like, oh, that's so cool, like moths to flames, except it's humans to glow chemicals things. I've been podcasting for 3 years. I am not an audio professional. I started this whole thing with no experience and no idea really like what I was doing or what was going on. And I thought it'd be fun if I kind of talked about how I've been doing this for 3 years, mostly so I can figure out how I've done this for 3 years, because to be honest, there were definitely times where I was like, I'm probably going to get lazy, or I'm going to get overwhelmed, or this is just going to get boring, and then I'm going to stop. And yet I am here 3 years more than I thought I would be. So I thought I'd kind of like go through my journey and maybe talk about what has kept me going, and maybe that can inspire you to go after the things you want to do. And if you're feeling in a rut, maybe like hang in there and like keep going, tiger. Maybe I'll reveal secrets along the way too. Like I do that voice because I think a lot of advice out there is very hokey. I think it's real. You know, I think like that sentiment can be true. I just think that there's a delivery that some people have that's very annoying, as though it's dismissing how hard things can actually be. Ooh, don't we love that secret? It really wasn't. You can just like intone on that, whatever. Just like things like that. Maybe I'll slip in here and there just as like a fun inside peek of what it's like to be me, a podcasting extraordinaire. So I started Angus Eye Tea kind of at an okay mental health point. I had just started my new job and I just felt so much better. I had moved cities. That was amazing. I was making new friends and I felt confident. I felt pretty confident in what I was doing and who I was. I didn't have overwhelming inner dialogue about how everyone thought I was stupid or didn't like me. Nothing like that. I was in like a decent place. I think I was in therapy. I don't remember. I might have been on a therapy hiatus, but I was medicated and I was like close to being on the right medication, I would say. So things were like rolling. They were okay. And I think that probably helped me get where I got, in the words and stuff. I think that having some sort of like base of being like, you know what? I have a tiny, tiny morsel of belief that maybe I could do this. And you don't need a lot. I mean, obviously the more you have, the better. But if it makes you feel better, I didn't fully believe this was a real thing until a year in, like a whole fucking year. So if you really are not confident in whatever you're doing, honestly, I think that's okay. Again, ideally, you would have the confidence because it makes things a lot easier, but you can build up to that. No worries. I mean, I'm here and I feel like decent. Wasn't that a great selling point? It took me 3 years to feel decent. I did a horrifying thing. I re-listened to my first episode, which I knew when I made it that I would always be horrified by it. Because whenever you do something for the first time, you're going to get better, even with the second version of whatever it is. For me, the second episode, like you just get better each and every time. And it might not be huge improvements, but you do pick up on things as time progresses, the more you practice. It's kind of like learning that in writing, sometimes dream sequences are really lazy, but then also you learn that nobody has a right to tell you what's lazy or not writing. Oh, isn't that great? Don't let other people dictate your art. Anyway, I listened to my first episode. I cringed. I listened to it on like 1.8 speed, so I didn't have to experience it for that much. But basically, I wanted to try to figure out exactly what my mindset was going into it. And I've been decently honest on this podcast. And I haven't lied. I just, I don't tell you my inner, darkest, deepest secrets because those are really fun. And I have to write a memoir someday, guys. I gotta say something for the book. A concept that I kept bringing up it was a new idea for me. And it was this idea that life isn't all that serious. And I'm not saying that life is expendable. What I mean by that is if you overthink every single aspect of your life, you make everything not fun. Everything has become a web of the worst outcome. And at that point in my life, that's what I've been doing. I hadn't even realized that that's what I've been doing or that there was an option where I wasn't doing that. I just thought that's how things were gonna be. And I had heard that. I'm pretty sure a therapist told me that or something. And I flinched. I was like, life isn't all that serious. I feel like I have to make a giant blueprint every day for every hour. If I don't have this plan, what do I do? What am I? And that was a fresh thing. I think that took me right into my podcasting because it helped me, I think, push me to try something completely new. And I think something special with podcasting is that it's not a super frequent thing that people have a lot of access to. So I think it's really easy, at least at the time of this recording, to get into podcasting and not know anyone in your life who's a podcaster. All of the podcasting friends I have don't live near me whatsoever. I met them online or at conferences. I am the podcast friend. I am the only podcaster a lot of people know. So in one aspect, it's nice because you can't really compare yourself to people in your life, which I think we should all try to avoid, which blah, 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 whatever. We all do it, okay? We're not going to pretend that we don't do it, please. I want to crush Bertha. I don't even know who she is, but she's going down. I believe in myself. I don't need to put down others to make myself feel better. Why would I do that? That's like a really shitty thing to do. But yeah, no, in one aspect, it's like nobody really knows how a good podcaster starts unless they listen to professional podcasts, but they don't really, I don't know. There's if you were like, I'm going to write a blog and everyone else in your group is writing a blog, I think that instantly feels weird. It could be liberating because you have a support system, which is the other side of the coin. Because I started out all on my own with no idea how to make a podcast. I was on my own. It all relied on me. I didn't know how to sound good. I got Audacity. It's a free audio editing program. I had played around with it as a kid when I used to record my guitar songs. And so I knew basic cutting and splicing. And, after that, I did some Googling. I found best mics, and I got a cheap one because I didn't want to throw too much money at podcasting because, what if I did 3 episodes and I was like, I hate it. I didn't want to be out of money. So I started this thing that I knew nothing about. I knew nobody else who had done it, so I couldn't really ask for advice. And even then I probably would have felt embarrassed. So why did I move forward? I think because in a way, it just didn't matter. Life wasn't all that serious. I didn't have to tell a single soul I was making a podcast. And that is essentially what happened for a whole year. People close to me knew it existed. After that, nobody knew. My coworkers didn't really get to know. People casually in my life, no one got to know. It was my dirty little secret. I didn't share it on my personal social media. The only people that followed me and listened to me were people I didn't know. And then obviously the close circle. So I started from scratch, hardcore. Didn't really believe in myself to have other people listen. I was embarrassed. I think also there's something to be said about me talking about my anxiety and depression. I was okay doing it, obviously. 3 years later, here we are. But I was still a little raw. I think I hadn't mentally crossed the gap of whatever I say here, anybody can listen to. And I was really worried about that because I didn't want people to start ragging on me. I think whenever you start something publicly, you're just ready for hate comments. And I knew that mental health was very sensitive. There's a lot out there that people get wrong. And that's in terms of opinions. Yeah, I'm going to say there's some wrong opinions out there. My podcast, my rules. But also just misinformation. And this podcast has always been about, these are everything from my perspective. I tend to share my stories, and then maybe if you pick up something cool, but I really am not telling you what to do. And I am not a medical professional. I emphasize that all the time. I really think you should go see medical professionals. I think that's great. I have loved my therapist and my psychiatrist I've had. They've really helped me get to where I am today. I was worried I didn't know how to really go about what I was doing, and I also didn't know what I was doing. And I wanted to make sure I didn't share too much. I didn't want to give away too much of myself. And so while I was comfortable talking about my anxiety, depression, I think at that point, it wasn't something I just was like, hi, my name's Elaine Best and I have anxiety and depression. I kind of didn't want that to be my intro. And so having a podcast about mental health kind of instantly lets people know about your mental health. And at that point in my life, I had just wanted it to be like casually forgotten. I didn't really want to be known for that. I wanted it to be like, yeah, okay, I have it, but it's not like my thing. But now I was kind of making it my thing. So I kept it hidden and I didn't let other people know. And again, there's something really personal about your voice instead of writing. I think writing is a beautiful medium. I love doing it. But when you hear my voice, you know my exact tone. I'm not having to use words to try to craft an image. You can hear my voice if I'm nervous, if I'm out of breath, if I'm angry. Like, we pick up on things like that. So it just felt extra vulnerable to be talking about all this stuff. So no one knew for a very long time. But I actually think in my case that helped me keep going because I was creating for me and not in the back of my mind thinking, what would all these people in my life think about this? Because it wasn't about them. This was for me and, for people who got to listen to it. But I was the one creating the art. I felt the need to do it. And so at the end of the day, I really don't care what Susie, Bob, and Sally say. I care about what I think and what I have to say. And obviously, if anybody had issue with that, seriously, I would listen. Luckily, that has not happened. I'm very thankful. But, that's just kind of where I was. And now I am very much like, yeah, I podcast. I've gotten to a point where I do bring it up a little more. I still feel weird, mostly because I don't want to be like, I'm a podcaster. I'm like really cool. It feels weird for me to say that amongst the people I tend to meet over here in South Carolina. A lot of people, I, again, have never met a podcaster in general. It's just weird. People don't get it, I think, sometimes. So, fun. So that first episode was really me just being like, I am anxious. I am depressed. When I came up with Angus Eye Tea, if you don't know, I was trying to think of a title for this podcast. I originally went with See You Next Tuesday, but then I was like, that's kind of inappropriate. So even though I highly enjoyed it, but I was like, maybe long term I need something else. And so I'm notorious for being bad at naming things. This goes to characters, like just things, or at least it's very painful for me. It takes a very long time to come up with something. So I was doing a weird wordplay on anxiety. I came up with Angus Eye Tea and it just stuck. And so now I'm stuck with it. But I really wanted a fun intro. I wanted to have like a name for the people that were listening, that I would call them. And I don't know why, but I just was like, what if I call them Heifers? Like, that's hilarious. It's like they're cows, but we're also bitches. So that's how Hey Heifers came to be. So I had that. And then I created my own intro music using GarageBand and the loops they already had. And with that, I made like a little bullet point list, but I just kind of free talked for a half hour. I think I recorded 3 episodes before I launched, but I didn't pre-batch them. I didn't pre-edit them. I just had them sitting there, had the first episode ready to go. And then just throughout the week, I would kind of get it together. But I really did not have it together at all. I've never been one who's great at batching my episodes, which if you don't know, it's when you sit down for maybe a day or two and you just record a lot. And then that way you have all the audio and all you have to do for the rest of the month is edit. It makes it a lot easier to plan things, to keep going, to keep up momentum. And so I don't do it naturally. Love that. If I say love that one more time, you can feel free to punch me in the face. I know that you can't like do it, but just like punch your phone and trust me, I'll feel it. I don't care about the time parallel. Like somehow it will find me in the universe. So feel free. Thank you. Starting is always the hardest part, which is why I'm harping on this. And I went in with the idea of trying. I didn't put on too much pressure. I didn't decide that I had to be amazing. I didn't decide that I had to hit a certain amount of episodes. I just went in knowing that I would have to get a handful of these things out before I really found my rhythm. And I didn't really know what the whole podcast would be about. I said it would be about my anxiety and depression, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if I was going to dive into topics. I didn't want to be something I wasn't. And that kind of happened throughout the podcast. I'd go in and out of feeling like I was talking about things I wanted to talk about. I think the one of the reasons I've been able to have the longevity that I've had is that whenever I was in doubt, I kind of reframed what Angus Eye Tea meant to me. And so a lot of my most popular episodes are when I'm like, how to have a great day, or how to like ease your depression or whatever. And I usually use those titles, like they're kind of clickbaity. I do talk about it, but I never am like, this is exactly what you should do. And I'm always right. Like, again, medical professionals, this is just what helps me. But those are the kind of things that, like, me, when I was really in it and I had no idea where it was going, that's what I was Googling, and I would come across all the wrong articles sometimes. And so if I have that title and you come across it, hopefully you get a more like realistic dose of what's happening for you. I don't know. But anyway, that's why I sometimes have those titles. It's just because that's what people are Googling, and maybe they'll stumble and, not feel so weird about their shit. I don't know. But I try not to put any pressure on myself. And I think that's how I got to go as long as I have. So I've done those, and I'll probably still do them. But there was a phase where I felt like I needed to be really, what's the word? Just not emotional, but I don't know. There's a type of mental health out there, and it works on some people. And then when other people do it, it just is really fake. And it's kind of the whole, I've been anxious my whole life. I have $50,000 always in my savings account, and my car isn't like the most recent, but I do struggle, and I see you and respect you. And basically the caption goes on to say that money solves all their problems, even though they don't realize it. And look, anybody can have mental health disorders. That's just the beauty of it. So I'm not discounting that experience. However, I do think some people completely profit off of mental health in a way that I don't think is ethical. And I think that there are certain influencers out there who twist it in a way that is not great. I don't really know if I'm explaining this well. I can totally do an episode on this later in my feelings. But basically it was the idea of like, I need to share something really, really, really personal, whether it's like true or not. And then I need to like make it sound like I know things and you don't. And you can be like me and feel better. And I don't know how to word this, because some people are going to like, if you're thinking this is you, it's most likely not you. This is more like people who, again, I just get a weird vibe. I'm like, I don't think you're in this for the right reasons. This is The Bachelor now, and you're not getting a rose, Todd. Anyway, I would find myself kind of falling into that pattern of like, this is what everyone else does in the mental health influencer world. And I was like, this isn't me. I don't like this. I don't feel raw. I don't feel real. And also my personality is way more awful. Not awful. Unprofessional. I don't even, unfiltered. There we go. I cuss. Ooh, I say bad words. So, I think whenever I felt like I was in a rut, or I was like, oh, I don't really like what I'm doing, this feels like a pain, I would just pause and be like, okay, wait, this isn't the vibe I want. Let's change gears. And usually when I changed gears and was like, no, I want to like make a panic attack hall of fame, that's a certain mood. And so I would go there, I go that route. And that tended to give me more episode ideas. Because I was always afraid I'd run out of episode ideas. Even when I started, I was like, I can think of like the 10 big things. And if I go ahead and get those topics out of the way, I'm going to have nothing. But the beauty is that there are smaller and smaller bits of big topics, always. And also you have your life to react to and current events to react to. There's always something to react to. There's art you can digest and whatever. So if you ever feel like you're going to run out of ideas, I guarantee you, you won't. You will hit ruts, which is not the same thing, but ruts. How many ruts have I had in this fucking podcast? Depression has really played a toll on this little guy. I mean, like my first episode is called How Anxiety Almost Killed This Podcast. Like, I am podcasting about my mental health. Sometimes bringing up my mental health triggers the mental health. Like if I was talking about my anxiety about a certain thing, then my anxiety would come back. And I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm glad I did this. This is great. This is great. And when I was depressed, I just was like, I have nothing really to say. I did nothing and this is stupid. And I try to be real, but I also don't want to put out like really sad negative energy. Like if you're depressed, I don't want you to listen to me being like super, super depressed. But I'll still be me. I'm just, like a little more chill and less mopey dopey. Like, I at least like say words and don't do that for 30 minutes. I've at least done that for myself. Good for you. Good for you. Oh, claps for me. I don't even know what I'm doing right now. I've lost it. Anyway, so I don't really think you'll run out of ideas, but I also understand the red. So when I was depressed, what would help me is I would reach out to friends and I would use their brains instead of mine because they were very smart, brilliant people that were creative. And when I felt like I was an empty wasteland of nothing but pudding, I would go over there to their fruits and vegetables and I would consume them and take their ideas and be healthy. Except I wouldn't actually eat fruits and vegetables. That's disgusting. But I would really recommend using your people and your support group. Again, I didn't know any podcasters. So what I did is I was like, what's the internet? There's always a group of people out there. And so I Googled it and I came across a group of women positive podcasters. I came across Lady Pod Squad. And then through that, I made friends. And then I learned that there was going to be a women's podcast conference and it was going to be near me. And then I don't know what made me go. I guess it's because none of those things are ever on the East Coast. I feel like they're all in LA. And New York, or I guess New York's on the East Coast. Okay, Elaine, learn your geography. Nothing was like close enough that I could be like, yeah, let me like buy a ticket and go kind of thing. But I could drive there. And so I did it. And then when I went there and I met people in person who do what I do, and they were also just as passionate, I was like, oh shit, this is really fun. I'm actually excited. So that all started with me meeting people online. And when I met them online, they had tips. They talked about different microphones that were great. They talked about editing techniques. I learned about marketing stuff. So most of the things I know, I got from them. And then I've just kind of tinkered around with it myself. So having a community within your art, hobby, passion, I think is actually very important. And again, the great thing about being online is that even if you're socially awkward, it just like doesn't matter because you can just be you can just write words through your fingers. That is what they call typing. You're welcome. Also, when I was depressed, I took breaks when needed. I didn't do it as much, but you heard me take a break like a month ago. You didn't hear me actually because I took a break. It was just silence, but I took a break. I'd always, I've skipped an episode here or there. And that's just because, at the end of the day, I needed to sleep and like show up for work and be functioning. And if me staying up until 2 a.m. to do an episode, like that wasn't going to make that work. That wasn't great. So if I wasn't good, I wasn't going to be able to get good for the podcast, right? So I would try to focus on that. And then I also would just go back and re-listen to my episodes, which again can be horrifying, but sometimes I'll say something offhand and I'll be like, oh, like that could be a good episode to talk about. Or at least for me, I would just talk about what I was thinking at that moment. And it might not be thrilling to me, but the episodes where I did that and I thought it was boring, it turned out to be like my most listened to episodes, which I always thought was interesting. Because they're the ones I don't plan and I'm just like, this is going to be really stupid. No one's going to like it. Lo and behold, everyone loved it. Every single person in the entire world loved it. I'm so famous. I'd also forget a lot about where I was in an episode, like just now. I don't remember where I was. But then I tried to take notes when I was depressed. I just approached it in a completely different aspect. So I knew that my memory wouldn't be great. So I'd try to take notes. Whenever I would feel like a little up during the depression, I would try to make as many episode ideas or, figure out the content I needed to post on social media to promote me or whatever. I just try to do as much as I could in those times, but not push it too much so that when I was feeling low, I could at least push through it. And for me, also, this kind of goes back to reframing how I saw the podcast. Sometimes if it felt like a chore, then I knew I needed to stop and reassess because this was supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fulfilling. It's art. It's supposed to feed my soul. And my soul sometimes was starving and it didn't always want a sandwich. And so I gave it a salad sometimes. And then I realized, salad, it's lettuce. And I was like, let me get a stromboli. And we just kept going through until something stuck. So you can look at the things you're doing and maybe see why something isn't working and then do it. And that is what I call any self-help book. You have a problem, deal with it. Now give me $1 million. Thank you. I also try to remember what made me excited in the first place. And I would write sticky notes all around me. In fact, every review I got, I made a sticky note at one point and I put it in front of me because I had this narrative that I sucked at everything There was no point in me continuing these things. Like I'd never be good enough. And I kind of forgot that, I can't be in it for the numbers because the numbers will just like never be there. I don't want to like damn myself there, but I'm not going to have 1 million downloads. Okay. Like unless something horrible happens. I mean, great. Unless something great happens. Yeah. I'd love so many people to listen to my podcast that a million people, I don't want 1 million people's opinions, to be honest. And that's a great idea, to be like, what does success mean for you? I don't want that many listeners. I don't need that many opinions. I really value a close-knit audience that I have access to, that I feel like actually connected with the work. I don't really want a bunch of flyby people who listen to one episode and then they're like, here's my opinion, and then they never come back. Anyway, I kind of had to figure it out as I went, how to get through depression and continuing podcasting. A lot of times it was my main tether. It was the one thing that kept a routine for me in my evenings. I knew that by Wednesday I needed to have an episode up, which meant I had to record, I had to edit, and I could really throw myself into that instead of just like sitting on my couch and feeling very, very sad. Other times it was very hard to get to that point, but I don't know. There was something about having a consistent schedule that made me refuse to miss a Wednesday. So I would stay up very late sometimes and do it. But again, I mean, it just took time and practice to figure out how to work through a lot of these things. And it wasn't perfect, but I knew in the end it would work out. I had to, because if it didn't, then I guess it just wouldn't. And again, this was like a hobby. There's not a lot riding on the line except for my happiness, which might be a lot, actually. Everything is going to fall apart if you don't do it perfectly. That's my tip for you. Helpful. Don't do that. As we all learned, I'm bipolar, which meant that I would be manic. And that's something I'm still working through on what it's like to be doing podcasting, I guess, when I'm manic. Mostly, I would just think of all the ideas because as an indie podcaster, it's just me. I have no one as a team helping me whatsoever. Fern is useless. Stupid dog. But yeah, it's just me. So that's a lot for one person to take on, which means that there's always something else, like some other social media promo I could be doing. I could be doing like extra show notes, something on my website. There's just always 10 other things to do. And so when I was manic, I was like, I'm going to do it all. And I was like, I'm going to do it all. And I'm going to see my numbers go up. And they did, but at a cost because I wasn't sleeping or eating. And I was also extremely anxious. And I would talk really, really fast, which I already kind of do. But when I was manic, it was like I had stuck a fork in an electric socket and then I just screeched into this microphone and we all just were like, okay. Now, some of those episodes are really fun and exciting. That's the beauty of manic, is that it can be really great. Just the background scenery was not good. I didn't know I had to focus myself for the longest time. I thought that was just like, oh, wow, I can finally like creatively stockpile until I probably get depressed. I didn't know that wasn't a thing that should be happening. And just was like, oh, this is weird. We go through waves of being really productive and happy. And then we're just like utterly sad. And the happy phase is actually me incredibly anxious, but it's better than being depressed. So this must be what happiness is. Oh boy. Oh, it's really, what a wonder it is, guys. What a wonder. So now that I'm like a year into understanding my bipolar, I would say that also keeping lists and stuff is very helpful because that can make sure I stay on task. So when I'm depressed, the list is great so I know what to do and it looks more attainable because I've written it out and it's not just this free floating thing in my head. And then also when I am manic, I make sure I keep to the list and I'm not allowed to keep going. And I have to accept that even though I feel great and I feel powerful, I need to not. So that's sort of been helping me. And then aside from that, getting a chance to talk to you has really, I swear the times I've wanted to quit, one of y'all directly messages me and it just makes my world. I remember there was a time I was just like, I just don't know what the point of this is. I put so much time into this podcast and I have no idea if any real people are listening to this. I see downloads, but that doesn't mean a human. To me, you know what I mean? It's a number, not a human. And I was like, I don't even know if I'm having any impact. Like, I'm just saying things. Like, is there any point to what I'm doing? And I would also be like depressed at the same time. And it would just be really like sucky all around. And I'd be like, I hate this podcast. And then I would get a message, and the message would be like, I just want to say, like, thank you so much for your podcast. Like, I really connect with that. Or someone would be like, oh my gosh, you make me laugh so hard. Like, my boss is like, what are you doing? Because I keep laughing at work because I listen to your podcast. And that was really weird because it made this thing really real. Like, again, like the first whole year I had this podcast, no one knew about it. And now I had strangers talking to me. And now you guys like frequently DM me, and it's really fun and beautiful. So I know it, anyway, with that being said, it took a really long time to get to a point when, strangers DM'd me. Fellow Heifers, you're not strangers. I mean, I don't know you. I'm sure you're lovely though, because you listen to this podcast, so obviously you're perfect. But you know, if you're creating an art or a hobby and your entire passion is based on numbers and people reaching out to you, you got to give it up because you're not going to get it unless you're already a celebrity, or if you have money to throw into intense marketing, you're just not going to get it. And that was hard for me to accept for a while because I've just been so used to focusing on metrics as the sign of success. And my idea of what my metrics should be was not the same as it should have been. If you're in podcasting and you're not true crime and you're indie, don't compare yourself to that. Everybody loves true crime. It is easy to get to. There are 1,000 other true crimers. Like, they can all, like, it's a different network in a situation. I'm mental health. People want to avoid that. They're like, ew, no, I'm going to drink a beer instead. And like, same. But here I am. So it's not as bumping, and therefore my numbers, no way in hell, even if I'm fantastic and I like shoot hot dogs out of my eyes. People aren't a fan of cannolis. I don't know. Shit. Food comes out of my eyes. That's horrible. No one wants my food eyes. Anyway, I'm not going to naturally hit those same numbers, and that was hard. But if you go into something with that idea and you're comparing yourself, you're going to burn out quickly because it's not sustainable. And so many things can affect your art. Like for podcasting, it went down during 2020 because people weren't commuting anymore. And that's when a lot of people listened to their podcasts. No one was listening. And so a lot of people's listenership just deeply decreased. It was very unsettling and sad because it takes forever to build an audience. That's the other thing. It'll take a very long time probably to build an audience, but it is much better to have an organic audience, I would say, than to buy fake people to follow you and to just exist. It's just not fun. And you know, for me, honestly, I was like, my audience has gotten bigger and I'm glad that they're coming now and not during that first episode, which really makes me want to unzip my skin suit and as a meat snake crawl away and not ever listen to that shit ever again. So, you know, you can look at it in that way. We're like, okay, more people are going to come when I feel like I've gotten better at this thing. But yeah, okay. So basically, that's how I think I've made it 3 years of podcasting. Help from others, seeking out the help, doing a lot of Googling, and finding my own rhythm with it and not putting pressure to be perfect. With mental health, the same way you go about things differently, I had to go about it differently here, but I had to figure it out what that meant for me and how to be successful. And there was a lot of trial and error, and that's okay. I messed up. And a lot of times, I'm not going to lie, like I probably messed up and no one knew. No one probably knew because the mess ups I would hear, I would talk to other people and they'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, great. Okay. Love that for me. So there we go. You can punch me in the face again. I said it again. Anyway, I'm here. And I guess with that, I need to thank you for listening. If you've been here from the beginning, wow. Thanks, 3 of my friends. But hopefully you've come later. I mean, if you were there from the beginning, awesome. But I really hope that you didn't have to go through that and you just came maybe within the last year. That'd be great. No, everybody, sure, fine. Oh God. No, thank you for listening so much. Obviously, I can't have a podcast without like anybody listening, or I'm just very thankful I have people listening, and I'm even more thankful that y'all seem to dig, you vibe with it, you feel it. I think that's really awesome and cool, and it's something I never would have thought I would have when I started this thing. So, thank you. I don't know how to express emotion this way. I'm overflowing with gratitude. I'm a volcano of gratitude, and glitter is shooting out of my food eyes now. I hope you like glittery hot dogs. Thank you for listening to this episode of Angus Eye Tea, where I am 3 years old. So fun. I still can't believe it. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Angus Eye Tea. That's Angus like the cow, I like the body part, tea like the drink. I'm very active on Instagram. My Twitter, though, is mostly just there to say it's there. Maybe I'll start tweeting again, but I don't, ew. But anyway, I'm pretty active on Instagram. You can check out my stories, and usually my dog is involved. So if you want nothing to do with me, that's totally fair. But hey, my dog's over there. You can also go to my website, www.angusIT.com, where I hypothetically update it. Hypothetically. You can email me at angusit@gmail.com if you feel fancy, but also my DMs are just open, so feel free to chat to me. I have a ton of fun with y'all. And I know I'm forgetting something. This is the beauty. When you do this for 3 years, you just give up. I used to try to be perfect, and now I'm like, I don't care. This is a sloppy Joe of a podcast. Anyway, with that, I hope that you start something and you also do it for longer than you thought you would, but in a good way. Like, maybe don't become a murderer and then do that. Don't be successful in that way. Just something a little more tame. Maybe crocheting. Ooh, that's fun. You can still get a hook, a hook that would stab people, except you're stabbing yarn and you're creating things that you can make from crochet. I wish that for you. And with that, I will talk to you next Wednesday. Bye, Heifers.